Yeah. Wow! Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Weekly Spin Rack. My name is Chris, and I will be your host for this evening. Let me just pull up some of my little tools here that show me what's going on in the chat. And, oh, wow. Starting off, people have already made some super chat donations. Let me acknowledge that. Thank you very much to Kevin Connor and to D.W. Dunphy. That's so kind of you. And Dunphy comments, feeling down tonight, losing Adams and probably George Perez this year is like losing Bowie and Prince in 2016. Yeah, I feel you there. I don't think that there's really any way around it. Like, we're going to have to talk a little bit about Neal Adams and his legacy tonight. So I have some stuff planned. Let me acknowledge some other folks that are here. Hello to Tony and Moritaka, JSA, Robert, Armin, Andrew, Sean, Sir Mr. Howell, Dave Q, Iron Shell, Steven Johnson, Clay, Big Gay Dave, John Dorsey, Philip Arsenault, Zoe T. Lovely! Wow, what a great group we're starting off with right here. So, in case this is your first time, what is this show? Well, couple things. It's all comic book related. I am going to do some quick mini reviews of the comics that I picked up this week, which it was a massive week for me personally. Just picked up a ton of comics, just a ton. Can't wait to sort of talk about my recommendations. And then I'm going to be drawing something tonight. It's going to be a Neal Adams character. While I do that, I'm going to talk about the comic book related news of the week. We can sort of just riff on that, talk with each other, and I'll take some questions from the chat room. Hello also, let's see, I've got Joe Dent, Ricky Prickles, A-Man, Giovanni, Tom, Samuel. Great to have you all here. Fantastic. Let me say, this was a huge week for comics, which is funny because last week I only picked up 2 new things. Very, very light. And then this is very, very heavy. I guess that's just the way it balances out sometimes. No particular order. I've got it stacked up, what I've read this week. Starting off, we've got Batman Beyond the White Knight. Now, this is the 3rd miniseries by Sean Gordon Murphy, set in his version of the Batman world. He's just taking the elements in the mythology, remixing them into a new continuity. I got this stuff because I love his art. I love it. It's just got an angular, sketchy, but detailed style. There's energy to it. But I loved the first White Knight miniseries. Didn't really love the story of the second one that focused on Azrael. This third one is moving things into the near future, and we're getting a version of Batman Beyond, Terry McGinnis from the animated show. But it's a remix. It's not just a retelling of stuff that you know. The Batman in this is not like quite an old, broken down man. He's escaped from jail, but he's still a pretty big badass. It still finds a way to mix in this version of the Joker from the original White Knight series, if you read that, in a really clever, interesting way. And it's just sort of building up that there are some really bad tensions within Gotham City as there's a divide between the police department and a private security firm, the GTO, run by Dick Grayson. So a lot of the family is sort of like not working together. The Bat family I'm talking about. Anyway, really, really cool. Some interesting twists and turns to the story. Above it all, I just love the emotion and the depth of field to the artwork. I think that there's a lot that you can learn from this. I don't know. He's a superstar for sure. Sometimes I'm surprised that Marvel or DC haven't just rolled a truck full of money up to Sean Gordon Murphy's house to make him work on, say, an X-Men or, Superman, like the main story, the main ongoing monthly. But I definitely recommend it. One cool thing about this also, it's part of the Black Label series, and that just means that it's a slightly higher quality. One fun thing is that we get some of the black and white artwork before it's been colored for the next issue. No dialogue, no colors, but it's really interesting to look at the virgin artwork there. And yeah, I'm excited to continue this series. I definitely would recommend it. Looks like a bunch of people are saying that they've enjoyed it too, that have checked it out. Andrew, one of those guesses may be the correct one for which Neal Adams character I will draw. All right, let's give a plug to another YouTuber, the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel. I'm sure a bunch of you are at least aware of it, if not already subscribers. It's an interesting daily show where Jim Rugg and Ed Piskor crack open a comic and give their thoughts on it. Anyway, Jim is doing Hulk Grand Design, and your mileage will vary depending on how much you enjoy this, depending on how much you either want to know about the Hulk's history, or if you're a huge Hulk fan already that has read a lot of this stuff and just enjoys seeing it like super condensed, gets like, like we're talking like 1 or 2 panels per issue sometimes. All it does is it condenses all of Hulk's history into 2 issues. This is the second of 2 issues. A lot of this is the Peter David run. A lot of it is. And that's what I grew up reading. I loved the Peter David run on Hulk. It was interesting. And Jim Rugg has some fun doing some clever stuff artistically with this. For instance, this photo here is of a time where Red Skull had brainwashed Hulk and Juggernaut to work for him. And I somebody else out there that knows pro wrestling better than me knows what this is from, but this is like a pose from pro wrestling history. There's like, I want to say like Hulk Hogan and maybe like Randy Savage, something like that, with like a manager that was posing in front of them. And so Jim Rugg has taken that and remixed it into a comic book sense. So he does fun little things there. There's definitely some interesting playing around with styles artistically and layout and stuff like that, as you can see. He will have pages, that were drawn by, say, Sam Keith, and he'll draw it in that style. Like, let me find, yeah, see, like there's one that looks like Sam Keith, whereas this looks like it's by Dale Keown. Jeff Purcell, I want to say, for that one, maybe. So he sort of adapts his style to fit who was drawing Hulk at that time. It's an interesting sort of experimental thing. If you don't know Hulk's history, you can read these 2 issues and know all the key important moments of the Incredible Hulk, from his origin and his sidekicks, his love interests, and his enemies, all the way up through, like World War Hulk stuff. And there's even some notes here on like which issues that's from, so that if you wanted to read some more, you could like, get, I don't know, Marvel Unlimited or something. It's kind of cool. But is it like, would this be a satisfying reading experience if you just picked it up as a casual read? Well, that's hard to say, because by its very nature, it's like, it's recapping stuff, so it's moving at a ridiculous pace. And there's not always like, a panel to panel flow, because it's more like hitting key moments in time, right? Like, I mean, I guess this is like a panel to panel thing, right? We've got like Hulk and Bruce Banner in this foreground with some men talking about him, and then it zooms into their conversation. But then like we're just cutting to like Hulk escaping and like the aftermath, and it's like, there's not like much in terms of story flow there. It's hitting the highlights. It's an interesting book. Book Report Comics. Yeah, I heard that joke from, who was it? Evan Dorkin. I think it was also apparent that Rugg wasn't the biggest fan of Peter David's run. I'm interested what makes you say that, Rick. I did not necessarily get the sense that he didn't respect Peter David's run when I was reading this. I think he's just trying to make sense of all these stories that just kept happening and happening and happening. I mean, it when you put it all together like this, it's very melodramatic. Anyway, let me move forward. because I've got a lot of comics and I want to sort of get through them so that we can start drawing, talking about news, talking to each other. So I can't spend too much time on any one comic. Something is Killing the Children. Second issue of a new story arc, and boy, it's making some great adjustments so that it's staying interesting. We're finally getting a new monster, and we're getting a new human threat. This lady is a lot like the main protagonist of this book, Erica Slaughter, in that she's a monster hunter, but she's from a different house. And this house has now been assigned to kill our main character, Erica Slaughter. And this lady's a bit of a psychopath. She's like the worst of what a monster hunter could be, because she kills the monster, but doesn't want to let, like, you know, the people survive to spread the word. So she tortured and killed this family afterwards. That's a pretty horrible villain. Yeah, they've got new interesting characters that we're meeting. You know, different parts of the country. I'm just keeping it real high level. But I will also say, Dell'edera's artwork is getting stronger, in my opinion. And it wasn't, like, at all bad to begin with. But it's getting stronger. Look at some of this body gesture. It really draws you into the comic when you're reading this. Like, this guy's getting up, he's sort of got a bad back, so, you know, he's like bracing himself with his arm. You can sort of see that bracing on his hip and this, and then he's like sort of cracking his back, and it's very subtle, but you get like there's something about the character that we're getting told through the artwork that isn't getting like repeated through the dialogue. We're getting like his weariness and his sort of like just who he is from a lot of this posture. Meanwhile, this guy that he's talking to, a little overweight, you know, like sitting like more squat with his legs spread pretty wide. It's subtle, but and you don't necessarily notice it when you're reading it unless you're looking for it. But I like this. It tells you more about the character, and it adds that extra level. Or layer. I like that about a good comic book, is you've got dialogue that will tell you something about the context or content of a character, and you've got both how gesture is going to be done, what kind of lighting we're using, what kind of shots, you know, are we using close-up to like frame emotion? Are we using sort of medium distance shots to sort of stay at arm's length and hear about the plot a little bit more? There's some interesting choices going on here, and I like it. I like it quite a bit. For a horror comic, it's really, really cool. And I'm just glad that they're introducing a new monster, because my biggest complaint, if you recall, in the first couple of arcs, was that it was really cool, creepy story, but that the monster itself was a little generic. It was just a shadow of a giant sort of spider type thing. And it was fine for its purposes. I wanted something a little bit more visceral. And I think that we're starting to get that in this. So, in my opinion, first two arcs of Something is Killing the Children are fantastic. Third one does slow down just a little bit. Starting to get really, really strong again. This is a book I don't feel is on everybody's radar, so I'm just going to keep mentioning it that I like it a lot. Newburn is a crime comic. And normally, it follows a guy named Newburn, who is a former cop, now works as a detective for all organized crime families simultaneously, so that like he can figure out like which individual person has screwed up, so that like there's no war between the different organized crime families. That's bad for business. You know, they're out to punish an individual that's like screwed up, but they don't want to have like a whole family go up against a whole nother family. But this story changes the storytelling point of view, and it follows two cops from the present 2022 to 2016, when like these two main characters meet, back to 2006 to understand who one of the important characters is, back to 2016. Essentially what's important here is that a somewhat crooked cop witnessed something in the past that gives him dirt on an otherwise very impressive police officer. She's hiding a secret. And this guy is in tremendous debt from gambling. He overhears the otherwise main character, Newburn, talking about a case. And so now maybe he can get out of paying his debt by providing this information to the Albano family. This is the first of sort of a two-part story. So far, every story has been self-contained. It's brilliant. It really is fantastic with the pacing. Chip Zdarsky has impressed me a lot in the last few years with what he's been writing. I'm starting to think that crime may be his forte. I really do. I really do. Love this issue of Newburn. I think it's my favorite one. The non-linear story was executed really well, says Rick Ray. These are all things I wanted to comment on too. I don't want to repeat that though. It's a great observation. Cool thing about Newburn, you sincerely can jump in even now, like any issue. It'll all make sense. It's it's usually standalone stories. It's just that 6 and issue 7 will be part of a 2-part story. But it's nice to see a book that you can get a full story in a single issue, because so many of these are dependent on like sort of writing for the 5 and 6 issue arc. I get that, and it reads great when you can pick up the trade paperback. That reads fantastic. I wish we could get like a little bit more of a complete story now and then. Am I excited for Zdarsky's Batman run? I am. I probably will pick that up actually, because I haven't been reading Batman regularly for quite a while. But Jorge Jimenez is the artist, I believe, on that, and that guy impresses me a lot. So Zdarsky and Jimenez, that sounds good. Scumbag, Rick Remender's spy comedy book. This thing is super political. So if you are one of these people that's like, I don't want politics in my comics, well, first of all, there's politics in pretty much all of these comics, but this is very overt. Nevertheless, it's also very satirical, so I think it makes it very palatable. Might not be your thing. And I can't say that this is my favorite issue, but this artist, Boschi, is very strong, and I think the main character, Ernie Ray Clementine, is hilarious. He's just basically the worst person in the world. He's not smart. He doesn't take care of himself. He's dumb. He's into drugs. He's into anything degenerate. And yet he's accidentally been given superpowers. And currently he's in this battle where some fascists have turned the world into 1950s America, because they consider that when America was great. And they're being opposed by these super hippie types that want everybody to be, free and open. They're both super ridiculous extremes. And Ernie Ray sort of has to choose between them or find some sort of middle ground. And when he has faith in something, he's got superpowers, and he flips the devil bird to use his powers. It's funny, but it's probably not for everybody. That's all I can say. Thor. Haven't been reading Thor regularly, but it's issue 24 of the current series, but legacy numbering wise, it's 750. It's a big story, and I just thought I'd check in on it, see what's up. Written by Donny Cates, artwork by Nick Klein. Man, Nick Klein is good, people. Look at this 2-page spread. So what's happening here is Thor's father, Odin, has died. That's happened before. I suppose it's possible he could come back. But for now, they're treating it very seriously and solemnly. This is a funeral procession. And, you've got, all the people throughout Asgard and all the realms. We've got trolls and frost giants, and we've got superheroes. We've got cosmic beings like Eternals. Just a gorgeous 2-page spread. And on top of that, drawing a horse is never easy, right? Well, this is like a big, huge, magical Asgardian horse that has 8 legs. So you have to look kind of closely, but he had to figure out a way to make that anatomy believable, that you're not just sort of jamming in one extra leg here and there. And it is plausible. I liked it. I liked it quite a bit. It gave us some history and helped me kind of understand where characters like Thor and Loki are these days. Plus, we get some small stories that fit into past runs of Thor. This one's written and drawn by Walt Simonson, and it gives us a little bit more of Beta Ray Bill's origin. Oh, this was so fun to go back in time, and essentially, this is modern Walt Simonson, but he's doing a character that he created. I would argue one of the best runs on Thor ever was by Walt Simonson. So this is a blast. There's another, it's a great story that really makes you care about Beta Ray Bill. There's another one here when Dan Jugens was writing and drawing Thor, so he comes in and gives us a little more context, sort of helps explain why Thor in a certain story had been given these massive power-ups by Odin, and it sort of explains why he didn't hold on to those. So that's actually a cool story. This story, J. Michael Straczynski, Oliver Coipel, I don't know how to pronounce his name. It's a gorgeous short story where Thor is preparing his will in case he ever dies, like what he wants to tell humanity if he ever passes away, what he thinks about them. And it's poetic and beautiful. There's a cool Loki story here that sort of helped me understand who Loki is now. And then there's this cool story about Odin when he was pretty young by Jason Aaron and artist Dan Pastoras. So it all fits together, though. It all sort of tells us something important about just where the characters are and who they are right now. This is actually a good jumping on point, I would argue, because I understood everything. I wasn't lost in the continuity. Yeah, Macaseda says, love Beta Ray Bill. Hope he pops up in the new Thor movie. That would be awesome. That would be so good. What a great character he is. He really is. Anyway, cool issue. I don't know that it's inspired me to continue reading Thor, but I get why this is so popular, because I know that Thor has become a really good seller. Good timing for Marvel, huh? Like having Thor sell really well when they've got like a new movie about to come out. Like that's gotta feel good, because Thor was always sort of more of a B tier hero for a long time. So was like Iron Man and stuff. Where's Balder? Balder's in here. Balder's a really important character for a few pages of some of these stories. Yeah, Balder, Thor's brother. Good question, Black Phoenix. Nice to see you. Whenever there's a new issue of Saga, it always seems to be something that I could easily pick as my pick of the week for best issue, and this is no exception. Issue 58. Remember, the first 55 issues or 50 issues are all in a trade paperback, like super affordable. Space opera, family drama, still has action. We're dealing with single mom Alana, and she's been forced to like run some drugs so that she can just keep the family on the run from two different warring nations. And her daughter Hazel is trying to learn how to play music meanwhile, because they are living with pirates that are also in a band. It's crazy, but it's great. And in this, we learn a little bit more about the characters and where they are, but we also learn that, like, Alana's sort of current, not romantic partner, but more like business partner, this guy, like Bombazil, he has a dark history that he's been hiding, and that, like, escalates things in quite a big way. It's great. And by the way, I recently did an episode on letters pages. The to be continued letters page is one of the best. Look at this. You get 1, 2, 3. Yeah, okay. 3 pages of letters. That's a lot more than most comics. And guess what? It's still only $2.99. That's hard to beat these days. Price-wise, this is a great value. It's not only a great story. My God, Fiona Staples' art just does it for me. I love it. I adore it. There's so much that I like about it. Anyway, I don't want to drone on and on saying the same things, but Saga always gets my highest recommendation. I love it. Yeah, the compendium is great, isn't it, Steven? Moving on. Boy, did I read a lot this week. Batman Superman World's Finest, issue 2. This issue makes me think that this isn't necessarily set in modern continuity because of, I can't tell which version of Robin or Supergirl is in this. But whatever. Batman is working on a mystery because Superman got poisoned. With the help of the Doom Patrol, they were able to excise that poison from an otherwise indestructible guy. Cool. And now they're hunting down who poisoned him. New supervillain. And to solve that problem, Batman and Superman literally send Supergirl and Robin into the past to do some detective work, which is just fun. It's so over the top. We also have a villain, Felix Faust, who's been upgraded by the bad guy. We've got Billy Batson, normally Shazam. All sorts of cool things, but this guy, Dan Mora, he has only really been working in the industry for a while, for several years, but relatively new. Boy, does he have an energetic, clean line art style that speaks to me. I love this stuff. It reminds me a lot of what I like in somebody like Sean Gordon Murphy or Cory Walker. It's fun is all I can say. It ends with Batman and Superman literally in hell itself. Who cares whether this is set in continuity or not? It's fun to see Batman and Superman as best friends, just like teaming up and just going up against crazy threats and almost making it look easy. It's cool. It's very cool. There's some funny stuff in this too. Mark Waid has a good tongue-in-cheek sense of humor. Niles Calder is the leader of the Doom Patrol. He's kind of a genius. Batman, of course, world's greatest detective. And they're each trying to explain to everybody else like the history of this sword that's a clue. And they're each sort of talking over each other, like trying to share more details. It's just a funny example of two smart guys wanting to be seen as the smartest in the room. I think this book is like a vaguely Silver Agey time. I agree, Andrew, and I'm totally okay with that. All I want is a good story, so I don't care about continuity when it's a really, really good art and really good storytelling. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've got 7 more, so let me bang through this. I don't read much Star Wars, but I am reading Crimson Reign. That is set in a time shortly before the Star Wars Episode 4, and it focuses on Kira. She was Han Solo's love interest in the Solo movie. In this, she is establishing a crime empire called Crimson Dawn. And she specifically recruits in this the Knights of Ren. So this would be the Knights of Ren about a generation before they show up in the movies with, Rey and Finn and Poe. We didn't really get to learn much about the Knights of Ren in those movies. It was like, it always felt like they were going to explain it, and then they just didn't. They were just like a bunch of sort of Sith guys that hung out with Kylo Ren. Well, this explains them a bit more. And they're given a heist type of mission, because this is like a crime comic. They have to sneak into Darth Vader's castle to steal something. And all I'll say is, you're either into Star Wars or you're not. You can read this book without reading the other Star Wars books and keep up as long as you've seen the movies, I would say. And Charles Soule, the writer of this, has a great grasp of what makes Star Wars in terms of dialogue, settings, the kind of backgrounds people will have. It feels authentically like they could adapt this into one of those Disney Plus shows or a film. And yeah, I would totally buy this as is. So it's cool to learn a little bit more about the Knights of Ren. I can't wait to learn some more about them. And Kira is a good character. She's got her reasons for establishing this crime empire. She's not necessarily an evil person that just wants power. She wants to carve out an area of safety for herself and others. And if you understand her background, it starts to make sense. Callisto says, I was disappointed we never met the Knights of Stimpy. Yes, the Knights of Stimpy. Yeah, the movies never told us much about the First Order or the Knights of Ren. I agree. This starts to flesh that out. And I'm glad that the continuity between the comics in the TV shows and movies is so strong these days. You know, we're getting characters like Black Chrysanthemum was a Wookiee introduced in the comics. He shows up in the Boba Fett TV show. It's cool. I like that we're seeing things cross back and forth like that. Latest issue of Berserker's out. That's Keanu Reeves' comic to simplify it into its most basic terms. I think that this series is only going either 10 or 12 issues, so we're getting close to the end. It's about a guy who is immortal, who happens to look a lot like Keanu Reeves, and who has been around for about 100,000 years. And this issue, the scientists that are working with him are finally starting to make some discoveries as to his origins. We don't quite get answers here, but it moves at a really brisk pace. And we see that the people he's been working with are in the process of sort of creating a clone, as well as trying to harness that technology to not die. So I think pretty soon, we're entering the end game, you could say. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. Obviously, this is created with the intent of being like a movie, you know, starring Keanu Reeves. I don't know if it would work as is. It's a decent comic with action, and it moves at a good pace and everything like that. I don't know if it necessarily feels like it's got enough story to be a movie. Unless, like, if this was issue 8 and it was an ongoing that was going to go, like, you know, for 50 issues, I'd go, sure, sounds like the pace is good. But if it's about to wrap up, I'm not sure that there's quite enough there to justify a full story. I feel like it's missing something. I feel like I haven't spent enough time with the main character to really know who he is. I just haven't. Like, as you can see, with me just flipping through this, it's mostly focused on the government and the scientists and stuff, which is interesting for the story, for the plot, but it doesn't get you to know the character very well. We have Demons. This is Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo teaming up again. They had a very famous run on Batman when the New 52 launched. It was arguably the best received series. So it's nice to see them back together. Creator-owned book this time, and it involves demons and people of faith fighting them. And boy, are the demons in this foul-mouthed. And we get to meet like the sort of sidekick or supporting character Gus in this, who was a man, turned into a demon, but the main character's father had like created this headband that actually allowed him to come back and like be himself like as a human and retain his humanity. So he fights for good, and we get to learn a lot about him and about how these folks have this special metal that they call Halo, and that can kill demons as long as you are exhibiting faith in something. Doesn't necessarily have to be religious faith, but like, you know, true faith in something. I ran into a woman who looked like she was drawn by Greg Capullo. She had black hair and blue eyes. It was kind of weird. DCAM says, I could have sworn that they completed the first arc a few months ago. Yeah, this was completed online, I believe. I think it was available as a subscription. But this is it now in print that they're doing through Dark Horse. I didn't read it online, so I am now reading it myself for the first time. This just is coming out in print now. Because I'm old-fashioned, I guess. Folks, if you told me that there was going to be a really good Punisher series that I'd be super into right now, I wouldn't have easily believed you. And I certainly wouldn't have believed it when I saw the preview images of Frank Castle with a new Punisher logo working for the Hand. But it makes sense. It makes sense because it's using Marvel history in a really clever way. What do we know about the Hand? Well, one thing we know is that they can resurrect the dead. They've done it for like Elektra and Wolverine and some other characters. They also want to have a leader who's absolutely brutal. So they have recruited the Punisher and asked him to lead them, and in exchange, they have revived Frank Castle's wife. I believe that he would consider doing this. He has access to their resources, and he's aiming them at terrorists and threats like that. They said that they'll be bringing his kids back as well. But here's what you look at this and you're like, well, come on, you can't trust the Hand. They're gonna pull the rug out from under Punisher at some point, and the Punisher is most dangerous when he's angry. You know, he is a ticking time bomb. So yeah, is he leading them? Theoretically. But I'm sure that they have their reasons for that. And look, this is great. Punisher is trying to learn how to study their ways and become like, if not a ninja, just become a better fighter because he has access to this. And he's kind of getting his ass kicked by like an average guy until he just does the unexpected for them at least. You know, he grabs a sword with his bare hand and headbutts the guy. Yeah, the Punisher is a Marine. He's not a guy that can go up against Daredevil or Iron Fist or anything like that. Seems like Frank should know better. Yeah, but he's never really tangled directly with the Hand, and he doesn't sit around and befriend Daredevil to learn more about them, does he? And I do think that would be one of his few weaknesses. If somebody said, like, hey, we have the power to bring your wife back, and you get to lead us. If you want to, like, turn our ninjas against terrorists and stuff, we're fine with that. I think Frank would explore it. I do. Maybe he's got a backup plan in case they betray him. He's also starting to exhibit a little bit of superpowers. So they're definitely corrupting him in some way. He sort of... He realizes that he knows that somebody is armed. He doesn't see it, he just knows it. So the Hand is doing something to him. Okay, cool. I'm curious where that's going. Also, the bad guys that he's going up against, the main terrorist group here, well, we can see that they wear, like Roman headdress and stuff like that, and that they're gun runners and stuff. But here's what we learned in the last page of this that I just think is cool, might get you into the book. They're being led by Ares, the god of war. That's a cool character. And... What kind of a mismatch is that? Punisher versus Ares, the god of war? I don't know. Seems like he's definitely outgunned. But I think what I like about this the most is that I seriously look at this and I'm just like, oh my god, like, you know, something's going to go wrong and Punisher is going to lose his cool on the Hand. And I can't wait to see what he does when he gets mad at them. I love it. Yeah. These are flashbacks with young Frank Castle. And what's he wearing? A Captain America shirt. It makes sense to a degree. Young Frank Castle would like Captain America. He's always looked up to Captain America, hasn't he? He knows that he's not anywhere near what Captain America is, but he looks up to him. Amazing Spider-Man has been rebooted. Well... rebooted is too intense. There's a new run. Written by Zeb Wells, art by John Romita Jr. We just get a little hint that something big has happened, that there was a huge explosion. Don't know really much about what happened there yet. That's backstory that we'll come upon. And then we jump 6 months ahead. And Peter Parker has sort of cut himself off from a bunch of his friends and stuff. So he needs to, like, get back to being who he is. But he's still trying to be a good person. And in this, he's dealing with, like, gang war stuff. Tombstone, The Rose, people like that. It's good. But Peter's very sort of, like, angry and standoffish. But look, here's the main point of talking about this, right? Who's drawing it? John Romita Jr. He's had a few runs on Spider-Man in the past. They've always been acclaimed. He's, not everybody's a fan of John Romita Jr. I think it depends on how much time he has to spend on something to see how good it can look. But I believe that John Romita Jr., when he starts seeing, like, any critiques and that people don't like his work, I believe that John Romita Jr. always sort of has something to prove. Which maybe comes from the fact that his father was already a great artist when he decided to enter this field. So he's always had something to prove. And I think he's got that again here. His DC work didn't quite go over maybe the way you would hope, or he would hope. So the level of detail and the care for each page and panel composition and storytelling is exceptional. Maybe you still don't like his style. I do quite a bit. But this is some of his most detailed work. It's not super cartoony. It's great. It's really, really cool. And yeah, anytime John Romita Jr. has something to prove, it's going somewhere interesting. Oh, by the way, Mary Jane Watson seems to be married to a guy with 2 kids. What's that about? Don't know. Good drama. Well, I can understand being tired of downtrodden Parker stuff, but you've been following since 2011? Well, I've been following longer than that. Comics are cyclical. They're always like the ongoing ones. The ongoing serialized superheroes, they're always going to go back to basics and get back to sort of what works. That's just the nature of it. So at a certain point, I don't think you should read every run. I think you should tune in when there's a writer and an artist that you respect and see what they do with the material. But you can't expect it to actually change and grow. It's always going to reset. It just does. Because they're trying to get new readers. We're almost done, folks. 2 more. Pick this up because Justice League issue 75 came out, and it's a pretty big story. We'll see how long it lasts. It does have a really nice acetate cover here with the artwork underneath. Written by Williamson, art by Sandoval. What's the big deal here? Bunch of superheroes, bunch of the Justice League get teleported. And then they meet some of their multiversal brethren, like Captain Carrot and Aquawoman and a Flash of Another World, things like that. They all go up against Pariah. Now, Pariah was a guy originally introduced in Crisis on Infinite Earths, 1986. He was doomed to go to each universe that was dying, witness it, be drawn to the next universe that was dying. And it was something to do with, like, his experiments. So he felt guilty about it. Anyway, it's driven him mad at this point. And he now has mind control of the most powerful enemies. We've got Necron, what's that? I think Black Hand, Darkseid, Eclipso, Ares, Doomsday, the Upside Down Man. I think that might be Trigon, but I'm not an expert on that. He's got a huge dark army, right? The Justice League goes up against him. Guess what happens? Justice League gets their ass kicked. More than that. They lose. They just flat out lose. What happens here? This is the big stuff. I'm skipping forward to just give you an idea. Yeah, this is just a hint at some of what happens. A bunch of the Justice League is killed off. We're talking like basically all the main superheroes. All the main superheroes killed off. Now, I think a lot of us that have been reading comics know that death in superhero comics never seems to last. But when you position a story as like, this is the starting point, the guys you know have all been killed off, you're like, okay, well, I believe they're coming back at some point, but I guess I don't really know exactly how you would, because it sure seems like you killed them off in a pretty thorough way. So that's interesting, first of all. So you're like, okay, well, I believe they'll get to point B where they come back, but I don't know how yet. So I am curious to see how you get to point B. If you make that logical, then maybe I'm along for the ride. And it gives the writers room to explore what will probably sort of be a lot of, the sidekicks and supporting cast of a lot of these characters. We're in a world where there's more than one Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, Flash, Green Lantern. There's more than one. So let's just take the main ones off the board for at least a while. But all of them, not just like one, because sometimes that happens, but let's take them all off. And now you've got like all your heavy hitters, the sort of leaders that people look to when there's a big crisis and say, can the next generation step up? I feel like that's an interesting story. So I'm curious where this goes. I'm curious. Normally I feel like this kind of a thing is sort of a gimmick, right? And I guess it is. But I'm curious about this gimmick. It's got me intrigued. It's got me intrigued quite a bit. Now, this particular... I think that there is a sort of a newsstand version without all this sort of fancy cover that's like a more reasonable price. This one was $6.99. But, you know, I can kind of justify my comic spending because I do a show about it. So I don't think about it as much as the next person. But I understand if the budget was important to you. I do think that this was pretty interesting. And this is a starting point for something that could be cool. They could drop the ball, right? I'm not promising that this is going to be a good story. What I am saying is sort of as a prelude, as a moving the chess pieces into position to tell a story. Not bad. Not bad. Last thing I'll talk about is a new issue, and it's funny to call this a new issue. Issue 5, the final issue of Ninja Turtles: The Last Ronin. This took like a year and a half to get out, this story. Only 5 issues, but it started back in 2020, I want to say. Yeah, somewhere in 2020. And now we're in 2022 and getting issue 5. It came out very slow. But it's pretty cool. First of all, story, or at least plot, by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, the creators of the Ninja Turtles. All right. Written with Tom Waltz, who's written a lot of the monthly stuff. And it's, there's only one Ninja Turtle left in the future. Michelangelo. And he's in the future with April and April's daughter. And they've got to take out the Shredder's grandson, who is controls all of New York City. It's pretty badass. It's good. It's good action. This one's just nothing but action. It's set everything up. It's a good fight. A lot on the line, and it kind of ends the way it should. I liked it. I liked it quite a bit. I feel like you guys are lucky if you haven't read it yet, because you can now read the whole story all at once. 5 issues and get a story, whereas I had to wait a year and a half. $8.99, so it ain't cheap. It's also oversized, if you're curious. Like, this is a standard comic. Like, you can see it's a little bigger. It's a little bigger. But anyway. Do I recommend it? I can't enthusiastically recommend it, but if you like Ninja Turtles, it's hard to say no to, since it has the involvement of the original creators, and it tells us a new sort of a story. The ending might be seen as a little anticlimactic, but I think it was the appropriate way to do it. I think it was. I'm going to have... Something like this is like, it's the end of a story, and I need more than a couple days to sort of digest the whole piece to really decide on my full thoughts on the story as to, its pacing and what it's trying to tell. Anyway. So, I also picked up some back issues, but I'll just point them out. I got a cool issue of Avengers where Scarlet Witch goes cuckoo. I got this issue of Darth Vader by Charles Soule, because I've really enjoyed his Star Wars Crimson Reign. And I picked up The Illuminati by Bendis and Reed. These are things that might show up in the movies. All right. That was a lot. Wow, that took me almost half the show just to talk about the comics I read this week. Let me, is this set in the original Mirage universe, asks Connor. Yeah, very much so. Not that it necessarily needs to be considered canon, since it's in the future, right? So it's still sort of a potential story, but yeah. Well, I'm happy to take some of your questions, but let's also start with some artwork, and at the same time I'm going to talk about the first piece of news, which a lot of you probably know about. We lost a real titan this past week, and it still hurts. It sucks. We lost Neal Adams. I don't have a fun, easy, quippy way to talk about something like that. Neal Adams was a hugely influential artist to the industry. because he started drawing comics with a lot more realism and detail than was typically used at the time. I'm not saying he was the first, but he was a superstar artist because of it. It made him very popular with fans. It did take him a while to get his career going. I'll have to do an episode about that at some point. But once he started and was like, working on stuff like Batman, he was a huge force in the industry. And here's what's cool about Neal Adams, folks, is he used his superstar status to help everybody else. It's that rising tide lifts all boats philosophy, where instead of, him just sort of getting his, he did a couple things that were really amazing. He was always fighting for sort of creator rights and creator credit. In interviews, he always mentioned the rest of his creative team. It wasn't just like me. When he started becoming a superstar, he did something that not many people did at that time, which was he was working for both Marvel and DC under his real name. There were a few people that would work under a pseudonym at the second company because Marvel and DC didn't really like sharing talent. But because he was selling the comics, neither of the companies wanted to lose him. So they were like, okay. So he was doing stuff like, Batman and X-Men at the same time. That changed things. You got to understand that changed things. He fought for creators to get back their original art. Jack Kirby being one of the most prominent examples. He made sure that Marvel returned his art to him. That's awesome. He fought with DC to make sure that they gave Siegel and Schuster a better deal, because those guys had created Superman, which built DC Comics, and they didn't really get that much for it. Well, Neal stepped up and said, you guys got to give them a better deal. These guys are retired, and anyway. He did a lot to experiment with storytelling, panel layout and stuff like that, and he did a lot to just sort of emphasize realism. John Dorsey says, take my word for it, that first segment of your take on new comics is loved by all of us in Tropes Nation. It's a primer on what to look for. Oh, thank you so much, John. That's really, really kind of you to both say, and I sincerely appreciate the super chat. Let me pause for just a moment. I want to talk more about Neal, but I want to talk about him a bunch. So let me pause and ask a question of you guys. I've been giving some thought to doing this. What if I, instead of doing a 2-hour weekly live stream, would anybody out there like it if instead I did 2 streams, one where I just review comics and one where I draw and talk about the news, sort of split it in half? Would that be anything anyone would be interested in? Or do you kind of like it like this, where it's, a big show that sort of talks about everything weekly? Let me know if you've got any preference, because I was just sort of giving that some thought, and I was like, oh, maybe there's a better way to be doing this. I don't know. I'm drawing, by the way, one of Neal Adams' co-creations, Deadman. I think that's sort of an underrated character. It's got a lot of potential. So you like the current format? I appreciate that feedback, DCAM. Thank you. Thank you very much. Would you do the shows on different days? Yeah, I would do it on different days. If I split it, I'd probably do the comic book review show on Thursday afternoons, and then draw on something like Friday or Saturday. I don't know. I like it the way it is. I'd watch it either way. Also like the current format. Okay, good. I like it how it already is, but the other way could be less stressful. It's not less stressful, it's just an idea. Comic tropes can't be replaced. Love the show. Thank you. I like this format, honestly. I think it's pretty casual. It is meant to be pretty casual. I like the way it is. Okay, I prefer it the way it is. Cool. I'll keep it the way it is for now. It was just sort of a thought. I was could I be making this in a way that the viewers prefer. That's all. But if a lot of people seem to think that this is pretty nice the way it is, then that works for me. That said, I may at some point try a bit of a different work schedule at my part-time job, but is my job, which may necessitate me at some point moving it to a different day. We'll see. I'll do the best I can. I like watching you talk about comics and also drawing. Thank you, El Rondio. I'd watch either way. Okay. For Thursday, though, would that give you enough time to review the week's comics? Yeah. If it's my job, I'll just, start my day, for half the day reading comics. It's normal. Atomic Hound says, I have exactly one signed comic, Batman 251, signed by Neal at my local comic shop in 2015. I would go for 2 streams, but whatever works for you. Okay. Congrats on getting that issue signed. I saw Neal at a bunch of conventions and said hello once or twice, but I never got to sit down and really have a conversation with him. I went to his comic shop, Neal Adams' Krusty Bunkers in LA last August, this past August. I will do a Comic Tropes episode about what he accomplished at some point, but just so that you know, it's not going to be this Sunday's episode. I didn't want to rush something like that. None of us were expecting him to pass away. He passed away from complications due to sepsis. That's like your body is fighting an infection, and it sort of fights it too hard, and it starts attacking your own organs. It's not something anybody was planning on happening right now. He was 80, but otherwise seemed pretty darn healthy. It's tragic, I would say. It really is. I don't think any of us expected this. And I don't think that there's too much that's controversial about Neal Adams. He used his platform to help others. He had strong opinions on comics, so I guess some people could argue a little bit with him there, but by all accounts, he was pretty friendly about that. And I would also say that, did he have some weird ideas? Yeah, I reviewed his book, Batman Odyssey, and it is bonkers. The story, the art is cool, but the story is all over the place. It didn't make him necessarily a good writer. And he believed in things like the expanding Earth theory. I would consider that pretty weird, but whatever. That's not hurting anyone. That's not a conspiracy theory that hurts anyone. If you want to believe that, then you're not really harming anyone, I guess. Anyway, it's sad that he's gone. I think that the comics world is definitely poorer not having him right now. I'll miss it. I sincerely will. Yeah, the Expanding Earth stuff was kind of out there. I also went to Neal's comic shop in LA and got to meet his son Joel. Oh, love it. That's great. You are a great host. That's nice of you. That thigh is looking pretty thick. Well, this one I hope is what you're talking about. But my thinking is, I can't really quite show it here, but, say, my leg, I can't quite get it on camera. But my thigh, we'll say, is this thick normally. But if I tuck my calf underneath it, it's going to push the muscle and the fat for me so that it gets wider. So, I've got to have room for the invisible calf pushing this out. All I can say is maybe it's not right. It feels right. I'm making the I'm doing the best I can. In 2020, Neal looked quite healthy, but in the past years, he was looking pretty run down. I guess I haven't seen him that lately. I guess even way back, Adams supported indie publishers. That's true. And I mean, he started Continuity Studios, which helped give rise to some creator-owned books. One of my favorites would be Bucky O'Hare by Larry Hama, and Michael Golden. You know, we wouldn't have had that without Neal Adams. Neal definitely did some weird comics and stuff too, you know. Like Mr. T and the T-Force, or Skate Man, about a kid with a skateboard. But you could never say that the artwork looked bad. The artwork looked good. I think Continuity Studios also did those Nasonex B ads, where like the B sort of sounded like, who's that Spanish actor? All of a sudden I'm forgetting his name, but he's like, Nasonex, it's good for you. I'm pretty sure he did those. If this stream went away, I would be sad. I'm not planning on making it go away. Last thing I want to do is make a sad out there. So I obviously reviewed a lot of comics that I read this week. I'm curious, you know, did any of you out there pick up anything that I did not discuss that you would recommend? Always curious if I'm missing anything important. Great Black Widow video. Oh, that's nice of you, JSA. Just joined. Was there a discussion about the streaming schedule? I just asked a question, Chris, if like people would... yeah, I was thinking of Antonio Banderas. Thanks, everybody. Would anybody prefer it if I, instead of doing it like, you know, a 2-hour type show, if I did 2 1-hour shows, like one reviewing comics and one like drawing and talking about the news of the week? But it seems like the vast majority of people kind of like things how they are now. So why mess with what seems to work? Shadow War in the Batman books has been cool so far. Okay. Picked up some back issues of Spider-Man Reign. That's a depressing story. 5th installment of Swing is coming out. Okay, I don't know Swing, I have to admit. Sorry. A book by the author of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure where he talks about his process in the manga industry in Japan. Oh, that sounds very interesting, Moritaka. Yeah. That sounds very interesting. Oops, hold on. Somebody's calling me. I don't recognize that number. Oh. Okay. Customer from work. I hate to say it, haven't been at the comic shop since the pandemic. That's okay, Victor. You know, like, hopefully at some point I can excite you about something and you'll order it from a store or Amazon or digitally. But that's okay. I have Hulk Grand Design #2 waiting for me in my pull box. Okay, well, you saw my thoughts on it. It's pretty cool. Ween writes in Swamp Thing is getting the absolute treatment. Oh, very cool, very cool. Adam Gorham wrote and drew a Godzilla one-shot. Okay. Sometimes there have been some really good Godzilla comics, no question. Yeah. To be honest, being in the UK 1 hour would be easier to stay up for, but I'm happy either way. Oh, well, glad to have you either way, Dave. I'm sure it is super late there, but that's really nice of you. I got my daughter the first collection of Why the Last Man since she loves Paper Girls and Saga. Good call. Good call. I am waiting for more Maestro books. Not new, but I read Superman Speeding Bullets. Okay, started reading One Star Squadron by Mark Russell. Really loving it. Jeez, yeah, this is some great diversity. I'm glad, like, everybody isn't like, Spider-Man. Batman, like, just nothing but, like, you know, like, the standards. Which, obviously, I read some of those, too. So I'm not saying anything bad about them, but I'm glad to see some diversity there. Let's see. I'm going to pull up some more news of the week. Oh, a lot of the rest of the news that I have just so you know, tonight is comic book movie related as compared to just purely comic book related. I just didn't come across a whole lot of comic book news. I came across a lot of comic book movie news, but I tried to stick with, like, you know, the stuff that was biggest and, you know, most relevant to everything. John Watts directed Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man Far From Home, Spider-Man No Way Home, and he had been announced as directing the upcoming Fantastic Four movie. Well, he stepped down. Just says that he wants to do something a little different because he's been doing, you know, a lot of superhero stuff. That makes sense. I don't think it's a big deal. We'll see who they get in his place. But there was somewhat related news. There's a rumor that Marvel and Sony have already got most of the deal together to do a fourth Spider-Man movie with the same cast and the same director. So maybe he stepped down because he's doing yet another Spider-Man movie, and they just can't announce that piece of it yet. I think that that's a very strong possibility. Also announced regarding Spider-Man, Sony announced yet another standalone sort of villain movie. Let me acknowledge this super chat from Andrew Jefferson. Favorite Neal Adams comic story? Favorite? Joker's Five-Way Revenge by Neal Adams and Denny O'Neil. I think that that's a pretty fantastic Batman story that really cemented Joker as a force to be reckoned with. I would say that, like, that's possibly my favorite story. Another strong one would be, like, well, actually a bunch from their run on Green Lantern, Green Arrow. John Dorsey with a super chat. Thank you. Says, well, Chris, your audience is just very sophisticated in their comic appetite. What can we say? I love it. I think that that's true. Thank you. I feel like I can learn from you all as much as anybody says that they can learn from me. Batman 232, first Ra's al Ghul. Ra's al Ghul is a great villain. Great creation. So is Talia. And Man-Bat. He created Man-Bat. That's a pretty cool one. I think Batman should have a few more horror-ish type villains. So, yeah. Frank Miller. Oh, yeah. So let me move on with more news of the week. Oh, but let me finish up. I was saying that Sony... oh man. Sony announced yet another standalone movie based on, like, you know, a character from the Spider-Man comics. Okay, fine. Yeah, you guys own that. Like, what are you going to do? We're going to get I don't know, Silver Sable? She could support her own movie. Or maybe White Tiger? I think White Tiger might be part of the Spider-Man rights. That's a great superhero. No, it's going to be El Muerto. There's a collective. Who? Yeah, there's not many El Muerto stories out there, but they announced that Bad Bunny will star as El Muerto. That's a guy whose family is from, like, you know, has a long history of being Mexican luchadors, you know, pro wrestlers. They have, like, a mask that they wear. And the main guy, El Muerto, like, was, like, afraid to inherit the mantle. And his father, like, got killed by a demon or something like that. El Dorado. And for some reason, he decides that he's going to take up the mantle and he has to unmask somebody. I mean, that's a famous trope in pro wrestling, the, you know, mask match. Like, the loser has to remove their mask because it's otherwise not supposed to ever be removed. And he decides he's going to take off Spider-Man's mask. So he sort of becomes, like, you know, a Kraven the Hunter type guy going after Spider-Man. But how are you going to do that without Spider-Man? What is El Muerto then? Is he going to take off the mask of just, like, you know, Johnny Two Pockets? I don't know. It doesn't necessarily seem like the kind of thing that fans were demanding. El Muerto. My friend Evan. I've got a friend, Evan Valentine, who writes for comic book news sites and stuff like that. He had a great tweet. This is not mine. This is Evan Valentine's, and he goes, cut to the El Muerto post-credits scene. Vulture goes, I don't know how I got here, but I think it has something to do with Spider-Man. I think you should be on the team. And Morbius says, and I'm Morbius! You mean Two Pockets Shakur? Yeah, that's exactly what I mean, Chrissy. Oh, Sony. How can Sony make the best Spider-Man movies with those, like, Into the Spider-Verse stuff, and then also make stuff like Morbius and threaten us with even more? It just seems like a lot. It seems like a lot. I've heard of Rob Granito. Yeah, I think last week or the week before I mentioned that there's a YouTuber, I always forget his name, it's either Jerk Comics or Uncle Jerk, it's one of those two, and he did a 2-part episode about Rob Granito. I would argue it might have been a little long, but, it's an interesting bit of comic book related history. It's a guy who would go to cons and pass off traced art as his own, and then also claim that he worked with like a bunch of industry figures, and he just annoyed a lot of people. It's interesting because I'm sure he's not the only one that does that. If you go through Artist Alley, a lot of times you see like pinups being sold that are clearly famous pieces that are like just recreations. Jerk Comics, yeah. I'm glad Sony dropped the Black Cat movie, as I'm a fan of the character and don't want to see her get butchered. Riv Wilson with a super chat saying, going to watch after work, but wanted to share appreciation for the show. Well, I appreciate you. Thank you very, very much. That's really, really nice. There's other news. I think the next really big piece of news is Frank Miller announced he's starting his own publishing company, his own comic book company. It's going to be called FMP, as in Frank Miller Presents. Frank is the president and CEO, but he hired Dan Didio from DC Comics. Dan was a longtime publisher for DC and co-publisher alongside Jim Lee, and he's going to be the publisher of FMP. They said they've got pretty modest goals. They're going to release between 2 to 4 comics a year, so not tons, and not all of them will be by Frank. Sometimes they'll bring in new creators, they said. But he did announce that he's doing a new Sin City book, which will be set in the Old West, and he will do a sequel to Ronin, which is, I would say, an underrated early book by Frank, a sci-fi story about sci-fi and supernatural. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, one of the comments must have been like right about the time I was starting to talk about this. Thanks, Tari. I read recently that Frank is starting his publication company. Did you know about this? No. Didn't Frank Miller go a little nuts? I would say Frank Miller definitely did go a little nuts. Basically, right around 9/11, it seemed to affect him in a big way. There may have been external factors or internal factors going on as well. But I can also say that he seems to have made some changes in his life, and he has said that he said, I wouldn't take back things that I've said, but I will say that I wouldn't say those same things today. And he seems to be, donating a lot of his art to various charities and stuff, and trying to do the best he can with his work and stuff. So I think Frank is not a liberal. He's not. But he's also not necessarily a huge hardcore right-wing fascist either. But I think that, like, I don't know. So much of what I would say would be really speculating on the man, and I just don't know him. You know, I don't know him. I've met him, but I can't say that I know him. I respect a lot of what Frank has done for the industry. I adore his Daredevil run. I think it's fantastic. I hope he's doing well these days. I hope he is. I would definitely be curious to read his new books like Sin City and a sequel to Ronin. I would be curious about that for sure, no question. Andrew Jefferson saying, when is Sony going to bring us the long-awaited Hypno Hustler movie? I think about 6 months after they release Big Wheel, the movie. That's my prediction. That's my best guess. Thanks for the super chat. I really appreciate it. That's really, really kind of you. The DC Black Label book Rogues is a good read. Oh, okay. Samurai Jack was heavily inspired by Frank Miller's Ronin. I never saw Samurai Jack, so I guess I didn't know that. But I like Ronin. I think it's pretty cool. Folks, there's more news than just that. Let me move forward. Oh, this one was bizarre. Okay, I think at this point I can talk a little about the last Spider-Man movie. Anybody who's interested in seeing it has probably seen it in the theater. If not, you've had plenty of time to see it on streaming or Blu-ray or DVD, etc. This isn't even really getting into spoilers. It's just going to comment on something. All I can say is there's a big, like, important scene that takes place all around the Statue of Liberty. Well, apparently China literally asked Marvel to cut that scene out completely if they wanted to air it in their country. And when Marvel was like, no, they were like, okay, well, at least don't show her face and, like, minimize it as much as possible. We want you to, like, just try to... We just don't want that in there. You know, that's American. We don't want that in there. And again, like, you know, Disney was like, no, that's okay. If we can't get your box office, we'll live. But yeah, like, that is something that China literally asked, Chinese officials literally asked Marvel and Disney to take out the Statue of Liberty. And it's just like, wow, that's a big ask. Like, Spider-Man is set in New York City. He's an American superhero, and you're like, yeah, could you just sort of, like, keep that as vague as possible? No, I guess we can't. Sorry, we can't help you on that one, Chief. A kangaroo movie with Liam Hemsworth. Yes, that would be great. Sony needs to do a movie on The Thumper. That character is a gold mine. Oh, you guys know all the great Spider-Man characters. Look at that. Look at that. The FMP backers sound a little sketchy. Jodorowsky's Dune NFT debacle. I don't know about that, so I'll have to read up more on this. Maybe I'll have more news on Frank Miller's new company next week. That makes me happy that Disney had some sack. I'm glad that they didn't just say, like, oh boy, you know, we need that. Like, because, well, that would probably be like... It's the pandemic, but anywhere between 30 to 100 million more, maybe. Yeah, Doctor Strange 2 isn't opening in China. China didn't allow Eternals or Shang-Chi. I'm glad that, like, some of these movie studios are now kind of blatantly inserting, say, a Chinese actor just to appeal to that market. Like, for instance, some of the later Transformers movies did it. Like, the character didn't need to be there, but it was just like, and here's a genius from China. And it's like, fine. That doesn't, like, break the movie or anything. But it's kind of obvious what you're doing. It's kind of obvious. But okay, you're not breaking the movie. But the the whole thing of like, oh, if you have a gay character in the movie, or you're gonna like emphasize that it's like really set in America and stuff, and we want you to tone that down. I'm just glad that they're not doing it so far. That they're not just like, yeah, every dollar is most important. That would really, really upset me if we like heard that they've been making big cuts like that to appease that kind of attitude. It's not healthy. It's not healthy. It's about time that Disney stopped kissing up to China. Well, a lot of the movie studios, it's not just Disney. A lot of the movie studios are, because that is a huge source of income. So, they'd love to make them happy, but at what point do you sort of stop, Iron Man 3 and Age of Ultron. Were those aired there? I don't really remember. Did they have like a... No, Age of Ultron didn't have a prominent Chinese character. They had a South Korean character. So that wasn't like trying to kiss up to China. I don't remember Iron Man 3 well enough to remember like who was added to that one. I believe you, I just don't remember. I mean, wow, think about it. Iron Man 3 is something like 9 years old now. That's so wild. To me, like, it just seems like the Marvel Universe, cinematic universe, isn't that old, but I guess it has been around for a minute now. Huh. That's crazy. Iron Man 3 added a scene just for China. Did they? I don't really remember what that was then. It's just been too long since I watched that one. I don't remember anymore. Huh. It's not the worst thing. There's always been like product placement and stuff. And, if a movie could, say, make $20 million by having the character drink a Heineken instead of a Budweiser, well, that doesn't fundamentally necessarily alter the story, right? So, like, yeah, fine. Make the money. That's your job. I get it. I do. But if it's, like, going to change something fundamental about the story, I think you got to stick to your guns and just say, like, no, we have to make the movies the way we want to make them, and that's the only way it's ever going to work. But I've got more news than just Spider-Man movie stuff. I've got more news. Oh, interesting. So Remix says Doctor Strange swapped the Ancient One to Tilda Swinton to appease China because they did not want to acknowledge Tibet. Was that specifically ever confirmed that was the main reason they did it, or were they like trying to just not play into the sort of old trope of the ancient Oriental is a mystic, like that's I felt like that they were just trying not to play into that idea when they recast that, which isn't necessarily the right decision, but I'd never heard that it was done to appease China. I don't know. Maybe. Let me move on to my next piece of news. Like I say, a lot of this is all movie news this week. It's just that was the news. If you don't know about this, I wish I was you. But there is a trial going on between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. From everything I've seen, it seems like Amber Heard physically abused Johnny Depp. That's what I think I believe at this point. But who cares? Like, that's all gossip for the most part. At the same time, it seems like I'm not alone in believing that, though, because there has been a petition signed by over 3 million people. That's not nothing. To remove Amber Heard from the upcoming Aquaman 2 movie, where she plays Mera. That's a lot of people that are like, probably ready to speak with their wallets, and I don't know. It's going to be an uphill battle for Aquaman 2 to do the business that it did in the first case, because the public does not seem to be on Amber Heard's side at this point. Poor DC. You know, they've got like Ezra Miller, who plays the Flash, gets arrested for beating somebody up or throwing a chair, something like that, in Hawaii. Now they've got Amber Heard, you know, at trial, just getting grilled and demolished. She's going to be in Aquaman 2. You got to figure that, like, Warner Brothers is like, oh, come on, can at least one of you behave? What's next? Is Zachary Levi going to, like, you know, rob bank just before Shazam 2? I heard they cut Mira scenes in editing, so it's only around 10 to 15 minutes now. Whoa, that's a big cut. She was a pretty prominent character in the first, and that character is an important part of Aquaman's lore, but yeah, like, you gotta just downplay that at this point, because people are not gonna go for that. And I don't blame them. Yeah. It's pretty wild stuff. Oh, wow. Mian Yan with a super chat saying, China officials are kind of partially responsible for dulling the Hong Kong movie scene. That's definitely the truth. They're apparently not allowed to show the following: sympathetic criminals, superstitious elements, and LGBTQ people. I mean, as somebody who was so into the Hong Kong movie scene from the 80s and the 90s, that's definitely the truth. I mean, the movies that they make these days just don't compare. Like, the Hong Kong scene, they've got talented actors and directors. They definitely do. But in terms of, like, the stories that they tell over there, like, I haven't been super into a Hong Kong movie in, like, over a decade, I think. I can't think of the last time there was a Hong Kong movie that I got excited for. It just doesn't happen anymore. Gal Gadot also supported Israel over Palestine, but no one seems to care about that anymore. Yeah, because I think a lot of people here in America just don't quite understand that issue very well, to be honest. And to be fair, it is fairly complex, but I think that a lot of people just don't understand it that well. It's very important to some people. Don't get me wrong. It's incredibly important. It's incredibly important to a lot of people. But I think a lot of people in America, the average, like, you know, moviegoer, just doesn't know too much about that situation. So they don't have an informed opinion, and they're not going to base, like, their movie decisions on where somebody stands politically on that. That's just my thought. I could be wrong, but that's my thinking. This is very relaxing to color this with Copics nice and slowly. China sounds like a hardcore take on the Comics Code Authority. Maybe. Let's see. Here's a fun one. It's not all bad news today. There's a university in Canada. Specifically, it is in London, Ontario. It's called Western University. And they have a massive comic book collection that's been donated by several people that have, like, really big comic collections. They estimate they have somewhere around 70,000 comics in their collection, but they've never really known exactly how to organize it because it's just so many that they got all at once. And so they're asking for the public's opinions and help. So if you go to Western University's library page, there is a survey there asking what you would like to see in terms of how they could present and share this comics library, how they should organize it, you know, by year, by publisher, by creator, like, and why would that matter to you? So they're looking. They want to start organizing it so that they can share it with, you know, their students and the public, which I think is awesome because that's a lot of comics. And from my understanding, they have a lot of relatively rare Canadian comic book history represented there. So that would definitely be interesting to check out. If that's something that matters to you, especially if by any chance you're watching this and you're Canadian, you might want to check that page out, or just Google it. I bet you could find it, but because it's in the news this week. But yeah, they're looking for people's opinions digitally. Let's see. So does OSU. We have the biggest collection of newspaper comics and cartoons. That's amazing. What university? Western University in London, Ontario, Canada. I'd be very curious to, man, I could spend like a week at something like that. I'm like, yeah, can I just come visit? I'll organize it for you. He says as he just sits down and starts reading everything. Another productive day. In another year, I'll have this done for you. My collection is company, title, volume, and sometimes by writer-artist. Wow, Mian Yan. That's definitely a lot of organizing. That's amazing. Dave Q says, stupidly specific question, but was Croydon mentioned in Iron Man 3 in the US? Wondering if I've only seen a localized version. I'd have to rewatch it. I just don't know. It's just been too long since I've watched it. Great stream, Chris, but I have to get ready for bed soon. Hey, totally understand. James, happy to have had you here. Greetings from your old stomping grounds here in the 617. Oh, okay, you're from Massachusetts. All right, I like that. If my relationship had worked out 3 years ago, I'd be in Toronto now. Oh, okay. Toronto's a pretty massive city. It's a cool place. Best known worldwide as the home of Drake. I think that's what everybody knows it for. I'm just being silly. What's the next great Canadian sitcom? Because y'all had Schitt's Creek, which was fantastic. I loved that show. And then I also liked Kim's Convenience. Although that one sort of like went away before they really wrapped it up. But still, like, what's the next good Canadian sitcom? We've got The Kids in the Hall coming back on Amazon Prime, but still, I loved Kids in the Hall in the 90s. They were great. Canada knows comedy for some reason. Second City. Like, a lot of Canadians were in Second City. SCTV, you got it. How many fantastic comedians there, like Eugene Levy and Rick Moranis, John Candy. So many great guys that came through Second City that were Canadian. So many. Huge Kids in the Hall fan. Yeah, I really hope that this reboot is good, you know? I feel like they all look pretty darn good for their age, to be honest. I think that yeah. Canada and Massachusetts know comedy. So does Chicago. Chicago's big town for comedy. I miss John Candy. Yeah, totally. I miss Chris Farley. I miss John Candy. Some of these guys just gone too young. Wish they took better care of themselves. Phil Hartman was Canadian? I did not know that Phil Hartman was Canadian. I think I've mentioned before that I really loved Phil Hartman. I think he's a really funny guy. And he doesn't get credit for everything he did. Like, you know, he co-wrote Pee-wee's Big Adventure. That movie's hilarious. You can see him at the very end as like one of the reporters. What's next, Pee-wee? I hope the kids have settled their differences. I think that they have, but I also think that, you know, like, those guys worked really closely for a long time. They've had several sort of like little comeback live tours and stuff, I bet that they're almost like brothers, you know, like that they can like settle their differences like when they need to, but they'll probably always have some. But I like all of them. I like all 5 of them. Kids in the Hall are really funny guys. At different like points, I've like had each of them like, no, that's my favorite cast member. No, now that's my favorite cast member. I go back and forth. They're all really funny. And they've all done like some interesting projects aside from comedy, you know, like I don't know, from Disney animation to like CW dramas, and what was it? Scott Thompson was on that show Hannibal as like a forensic analyst. I mean, like just things that you wouldn't always expect. Phil Hartman was funny as the greaser type bad guy in Third Rock from the Sun. I don't remember that. I don't remember that, Joe Dent. He found ever amusing ways to say, "Oh yeah." Impression, please, Chris. I'll just guess, okay? Because I haven't seen Phil Hartman in Third Rock from the Sun, but maybe he went like, "Oh yeah, oh yeah." I don't know. I'm just guessing. It must be filmed in the States, though, because Foley can't enter Canada without being charged with millions in alimony. Oh, boy, I feel for him. He seems to, like, have, yeah, like, of all the kids, he seems to have, like, the most money problems, and it's all, like, to do with, like, relationships. I've heard about that before. I did not know that he wasn't able to enter Canada, though. Oh, man. That's rough. That's rough. Anyone ever see their movie Brain Candy? I actually think it's pretty funny. It's disjointed, but you know, they're already a sketch comedy troupe, so I wasn't expecting like a super coherent movie. I was just hoping for funny stuff, and I did think a lot of it was funny. But that's probably the definition of like a cult classic. You know, you either like it or you don't. Phil Hartman made the Crosby, Stills, and Nash logo? What? That's pretty close for the impression. I just guessing, Joe. Just taking a stab in the dark on that one. I've got more news. Why am I so slow to move on to the next piece? Whoa, John Dorsey. I may drop Kids in the Hall quotes from here on out. Cat on my head! Cat on my head! Are you a girly drink drunk? Five out of 6 Helens agree. Go for it, John. Somehow I've read an in-depth thing on the making of the Kids in the Hall movie, but I've never seen it. It's got some pretty funny parts. It's got some pretty funny parts. I think one of the funniest Kids in the Hall sketches, I know it's annoying to just hear somebody say, this was my favorite, like, Simpsons quote, and, you know, you're like, yep, I know. But let me just still say it anyway. It's my show, and I feel like it, so whatever, we're going to do it. It was just so long and weird. Like, this guy, like a businessman, and I think it was played by Scott Thompson. It's been a long time, many, many years since I've seen this, so my memory is spotty, but whatever. He looks at the newspaper, and it says that he's going to be kidnapped tomorrow, or something like that. And he's like, I'm going to be kidnapped, and he, like, goes through this huge, long process of, like, paying his... to get released from his kidnappers before he's really even been kidnapped or anything. So it's weird. But at the very end, he reads a newspaper and it says like that he's been freed. And keep in mind, he was never actually kidnapped in any of this. And he goes, I'm free. And he just starts flying through the sky. And I don't know. That made me laugh. I'm free. Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun drawing this one tonight, folks. I know it's a little simpler than some of the things that I'll draw, but I just sort of want to do a good job. I really respect the hell out of Neal Adams, and if I'm going to take a moment to draw something of his this week, I want to do a good job. So I'm trying. It was touching to see some of the things that people said that have worked with him. Both Bill Sienkiewicz and Larry Hama referred to Neal Adams as a surrogate dad, or like, a mentor dad. Like, they both used that phrase, like, of father. I was like, wow. I think that says a lot about how important he was to some of these men's lives. They really saw him as like a guide and wanted to please him. And that's kind of nice. I have a spike in my skull. No, you don't. What's my favorite Simpsons quote? Probably something from the monorail episode. Like, actually, I really like at the very end of the monorail episode. Leonard Nimoy is there. Leonard Nimoy, and he goes, "My work here is done." And someone goes, "You didn't do anything." And he goes, "Didn't I?" And then he just teleports away. I was just like, that's funny. That's pretty funny. Oh, didn't I? Neal Adams' former carnival barker. There you go. There's a little bit of history for you. Look at you guys. You're dropping the knowledge today. You're the ones that know everything. I call the big one Bitey. Monorail episode written by someone from S. That's right, Mr. Conan O'Brien. I'm glad I got to go see Conan's show when he was hosting Late Night a couple times. That was always fun. I like Conan a lot. He's definitely a comedian that I really admire. Not sure if I missed you mentioned it, but I read that the Wonder Twins movie is dead. I hadn't mentioned that, but I also read that news. Yeah, there was going to be a Wonder Twins movie. It sounds like that has fallen apart. I don't know that anyone was that excited about that idea, though, so that's why I hadn't really had it in the news. I mean, I'm sure that there's some people that thought, yeah, that it had potential. Maybe it did. But it doesn't seem like it's happening now. Conan O'Brien has a lot of DC cred. What do you mean? He's like written stuff at DC or something? If so, I don't know about it. There's one more piece of news I think I could mention. There is a new Walking Dead book coming out. It is about Clementine, the character from the Telltale Adventures video game, mobile game. I don't know how to call it. It's not all mobile, but, It's being written by Tilly Walden, who's written some young adult stuff. Published by Skybound, Kirkman's company, through their imprint, which is called Skybound Comet, which is like sort of children's stuff. But it looks pretty interesting. Great character. I think a lot of people would love to see some more stuff with Clementine in it. And that author, Tilly Walden, is going to go on a tour across both the East Coast and the West Coast. I think it's June 25th and 26th. She starts that in Washington, D.C. There's a convention that weekend. And then, he's done voices. Yes, he has done voices. And then Tilly Walden, that goes all the way through July. Something around July 20th. It finishes actually here in Seattle at Kinokuniya. So if that's anything you're interested in, you should look up Tilly Walden tour so that you can see, where she is going to be. But I think that book has a lot of potential, folks, so that could be a big thing. The Met Gala is tonight, and the fashion ain't great. Is it true? It's not great tonight? That always sneaks up on me because I don't pay attention to, fashion and stuff like that, but I will say that, as an artist, looking at those outfits can definitely give you ideas. Just weird, unique things to draw. And I do appreciate that Marvel Comics has created the Hellfire Club Gala, or the Hellfire Gala for Marvel Comics, that the X-Men host, and it allows artists to go nuts with creating unique outfits. I saw one designed by Mark Brooks for Medusa, made out of her hair, and I was like, that's pretty clever. I thought that was cool. I regret having a falling out with Mark Brooks. Back before he was ever, a published author or anything, we were definitely very friendly on the message boards at the time, like Pencil Jack and stuff like that. And I forget what I did. I definitely was overly critical of a drawing that he'd posted that I for some reason didn't like. And up until then, we'd been very friendly. And I shouldn't have been so mean or dumb, because he was always nice, is all I can say. I don't know. He was always nice, but I haven't really followed his career too well since we sort of stopped chatting, because I'd annoyed him. It was my fault. I was in the wrong on whatever I did, but yeah, it's too bad. Because he seems like he's grown as an artist, is all I can say. When I saw that drawing of in some of the covers and stuff, he's really grown. Conan was the Riddler in Lego Batman. He sure was. Yeah, I totally understand, Dominic. The you might compare the 12 to Watchmen. It's not trying to tell the same sort of story, though. The 12 is a good comic. J. Michael Straczynski is a pretty strong writer. So I do recommend that book. It's pretty darn cool. I'm gonna sneeze. Pencil Jack was a message board. It's probably still up, to be honest. I haven't. I just don't go to message boards anymore. But it was a message board. Originally, I started on a Wizard World. The Guide to Comics used to have a cool message board, and then they shut it down, and so a lot of us moved, and one of the guys that was on there started hosting his own platform called Pencil Jack, and it was just a place where a lot of, there wasn't really social media the way there is now for hosting stuff, or even really at the beginning, there wasn't really even things like DeviantArt, so message boards were kind of the place to talk with other people that were interested in comics. And that's where I met guys like, Robert Kirkman and Tony Moore and Ryan Otley and stuff like that. I just had that interview just over a week ago with Nick Patara, and he was on those message boards. There were a couple that were bigger. Pencil Jack was big, and Digital Webbing was big. We're talking around the year 2000 for the record. And it was just a place where we could get together and talk about comics and share our art and our writing. Target Dummy, thank you so much for the super chat. Thanks for the stream. Going to my first free comic book day this weekend, and I'm really excited for it. I also have adjusted my work schedule so that I can go to a free comic book day this weekend. I'm looking forward to it. Anybody out there have any specific comics that they're looking to get at free comic book day, or specific publishers they want to look for? It should be good. Should be cool. I'm looking forward to it. Nice Target. Oh, maybe you're saying that to Target Dummy? Yeah. El Torito has a very nice comment there. Even if Neal Adams is gone, he's still with us to this very day. I think that that's the truth. You know, how do we become immortal? It's by leaving behind something. That could be a kid. That could be a book. You know, for Neal, it's a ton of artwork, a ton of comics. And we're lucky we got as much as we did from him. He left us. He's leaving us with a lot. He really is. So that is a nice thing to say. I have to work this Saturday. I do too, but I'm going to work a little later just so that I can start my day at Free Comic Book Day. We'll see how it goes from there. Ever read the El Topo sequel comic? No. Are you talking about Jodorowsky's movie, El Topo? I didn't even know that there was a comic book sequel to that. I got the Trailer Park Boys free comic. That was okay. Lots of swearing. Okay. Interesting. I'm trying to think. Let's, tell you what, before I wrap it up, let me go and, to the Free Comic Book Day website, and I'll read through what the free comics are that are out there, and we can just sort of, like, mention which ones would probably be our favorites. Okay. Is this for this year? I'm just double checking that this is... No, that's not what I'm looking for. Free Comic Book Day. Let's go to that page and see what I can find. This is fun, right? Watching a guy play with his phone? What comics are available? Comics. Okay. We've got a 25 Years of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Best Archie comic ever. Okay. Something called Bone Orchard Mythos. That's through Image. A Captain Underpants Dogman book. A Doctor Who book from Titan. Something from Viz called Kaiju number 8. Oh, hold on. Super chat. Gotta acknowledge those. What's it say here? John says, blatant Jorge Jimenez mention post to make up for my missing a few weeks. I mentioned him earlier. I can't wait for his run. Yeah. You drew that pubic bone divot dudes have really well. Thank you. Let's see. So yeah, from Viz, there's something called Kaiju number 8. Something called Primos from AWA. Marvel is releasing a Spider-Man Venom number 1. I'm sure that'll be popular. Stranger Things from Dark Horse Comics. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from IDW. Kodansha is doing something called Wandance. I don't know that. 10 Ton Press is releasing 10 Ton Tales. I guess that's an anthology. There's an Avatar The Last Airbender from Dark Horse. Avengers X-Men number 1 from Marvel. I think that's Avengers X-Men and the Eternals, actually. Vault is releasing Barbaric #1. 2000 AD has Best of 2000 AD. Okay, that could be fun. Some Judge Dredd. Bloodborne by Titan Comics. Is Bloodborne a video game? I feel like that's a video game thing. Something called Bunny Mask Tales from Aftershock Comics. Looks horror related. Something called Carriers from Red 5 Comics. I don't know them. Clementine. There's going to be a Walking Dead Clementine book. A Donald Duck. Yeah, cool. Disney Masters Donald Duck and Company special from Fantagraphics. That could be funny. That could be cool. That's a good reprint. Buffy is an Archie comic? No. Buffy looks like it's through Boom Studios these days. Electric Black Children of Cain by Scout Comics. Don't know what that is. That's a tough one to figure out. Maybe horror? Looks like a young adult book called Enemies. That's through Yen Press. Equilibrium through Lev Gleason Comic House. No idea. Fuzzy Baseball Triple Play. It looks like that's a bunch of anthropomorphic animals playing baseball, and that's from Paper Cuts. Boom is also releasing Hollow #1. Oh, it looks like it's a take on Sleepy Hollow set in the modern day. The Inkle Universe by Humanoids. So some Jodorowsky stuff. It Won't Always Be Like This sampler by 10 Speed Press. Looks like slice of life type stories. Jonna and the Unpossible Monsters is through Oni. Looks cute. Behemoth Comics, I don't know them, but they're releasing something called Cult Cable. Marvel Voices #1, so that's just like a bunch of new creators, I guess, sort of like an anthology thing from Marvel. Max Meow, Cat on the Street. That's definitely a young adult. That's through Random House. I'm sure that'll sell 1 million copies. Neverlanders preview by Penguin young readers. Again, like anytime these book publishers publish something, you can bet it's going to get into everybody's hands. Mad Cave Studios is publishing a Nottingham special. Gemstone is publishing an Overstreet Guide to Collecting. So I don't know how much information you could have in just a short little free comic, but okay. Guide to Collecting. There's a Pokemon book from Viz. Something called Rima Chronicles by Graphics. Oh, that's like an imprint, I think, of Scholastic. I think Scholastic does their young adult books. Interesting. Dynamite is publishing the Marvel Red Sonja book, like reprinting the old Marvel stuff. So I guess having the right to Red Sonja means that they can reprint the old Marvel books. Those were pretty cool. There's a Sonic book by IDW, a Street Fighter book by Udon, something called Tex in the Land of the Seminoles by Epicenter Comics. I guess it's a Western. It's kind of hard to tell. Tokyo Pop is releasing The Guardian of Fukushima, and it's showing, like, the cover is a massive tsunami about to hit the coast, but in that tsunami, what we really see is a great dragon. A Three Stooges comic by American Mythology Productions. Man, a lot of publishers that I've just never heard of getting in on this, but more power to them. A book called either, I don't know how to pronounce it, like Tresse by Ablaze. The Winchester Mystery House by SourcePoint. And finally, Valiant is releasing a book called Year of Valiant 2022. So some sort of probably sampler of a bunch of their stuff. All right. Out of that, I would say that the ones that I would potentially pick up, I might look for the Dynamite Red Sonja book. I might. I would pick up the... what else looked cool here? Maybe the Donald Duck book by Fantagraphics, because honestly, a lot of that stuff's pretty funny. Clementine, the Walking Dead book by Image. That could be cool. The 2000 AD book could be cool. I've heard that Barbaric by Vault is good, so maybe I'd pick that up since it's free. I don't know if I'd pick up the Marvel X-Men Avengers Eternals thing, but if it's free and I can get a few, I would check it out. I would check out the Ninja Turtles book. I love Ninja Turtles. And I am curious about this Spider-Man Venom #1. And possibly the best Archie comic ever, because sometimes the modern Archie stuff is pretty funny and cool. 25 Years of Buffy the Vampire Slayer by Boom Entertainment. 25 years? Is that right? Maybe since the show started, it has been 25 years. Wow. I'm digging the cover of The Guardian of Fukushima. Steven Johnson says he choose Best of 2000 AD, Nottingham, Sonic, Spider-Man, Venom, TMNT, Donald Duck. Chris Sears says Kaiju #8 looked interesting. Andrew Jefferson says, I think Marvel Voices is all reprints. Okay. Personally, I would love to become the newest Marvel creator. Sure. It's good money. I'm bringing my 3 younger siblings, all teenagers. It will be interesting to see which ones they go for. That does sound interesting, Target Dummy, to see what catches a younger reader's eye. Yeah, I would be very curious which covers and stuff interest people. Cool. All right. I appreciate your feedback there, folks. I think that this is a good time to wrap up the live stream. I'm going to make myself some dinner and just get to work on the next comic tropes. It's going to be about a creator, but just to reiterate, it's not about Neal Adams. I didn't want to rush that out the second he passed away. Yeah, that would get me some good SEO, but if I'm going to do something about Neal, I want it to be respectful and like have some time to make sure that I do it right. So, maybe in a week or two, but not right now. Three Stooges, Avengers, X-Men. First time I caught the live stream. Love the Comic Tropes episode. Keep them coming, please. Greetings from Argentina. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. That's really, really nice of you. Thanks, everybody, for being here. It means a lot to me. It was fun talking about the news, drawing, and just hearing your opinions on things. It means a lot to me. It really does. Thanks so much for watching my latest episodes, and I promise I have some really big ones coming up, but some of them take more time to research than others. So, yeah, take care, everybody. Treat each other well. Stay safe, and until I see you next time, keep reading comics. Take care.